So thank you, guys. Yeah. Yeah. Of course you can.
Should start the meeting? Are you in the meet echo already? Because I am not yet.
I am.
Okay, good.
This is very sparsely populated room. People seems to be afraid of us, except for the note takers. Everybody is like very far away. No, we already have note takers. Come closer to us. Well, anyway, or if you want to check email, that's fine.
Okay. Meet echo. Go.
We should check and see if they're like androids or artificial people. Sometimes I wish I was. I might be faster than my daily task.
You fit right in.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon. Happy Thursday. It's almost over. You are in IoT. Excuse me. You are in IoT Ops. And let's get started. Our esteemed area director would like some words.
Hello, everybody. So the IETF non-com cycle is starting up again. So if you might be interested in running for any of the area director positions.
Microphone, please.
The mic might be off. Yeah, someone put it off. I don't know who that was.
Apologies, the mic was off. There we go. Let's do this again. So hi, everyone. The IETF non-com cycle is starting up again. So if anybody might be interested in running for any of the AD positions, I'm more than happy to chat, explain what it's like. You know, it's a lot of fun. It is a fair bit of work, but it's fun. You get to read all sorts of documents, and I'm more than happy to chat with anybody, you know, tell you about the good parts, etc. So please come and chat with me, or just put your name in when the nomination's open. That's it.
Should I run through the slides?
Yes, please.
I don't have control of the slides. You do. Yeah, so welcome to our IETF 120 IoT Operations meetings. My esteemed co-chair Alexei and me, myself, Hank, will be guiding you as co-chairs through this session. Please mind this session is recorded under, you have to do that, under the note well. So note it well, whatever you say here falls under certain IPR things. Basically, I have to be aware of the BCPs on the bottom of this. There's BCP 25, which is note very well on the next slide. You can fight a lot on the mic about the content, about the feasibility of solutions, but please not with each other. Sometimes the chairs can't see that there's fighting happening beside the scenes. It's not technical, but somehow personal. Be friendly to each other. Try to treat each other as you want to be treated. And if it's not possible to resolve a situation, please approach the chairs or the ombuds team. We can help you. Next slide. So when you're in the room, there's a QR code. Please scan that if you are not already logged into the Meet Echo. That helps you to be an on-site participant. It's taking track of the numbers of people in the room so we can plan IETF meetings better and better. And that's useful to us. Also, there is a raise hand option in any tool, the small tool or the higher tool, the bigger tool. When you want to enter the mic or have a question between in a session, just raise your hand. The chairs will give opportunity to then speak at the mic or the presenter. We tag team that it is depending on the situation. It's important to use the hand tool when you're in the room because the off-site, the remote participants otherwise don't have a chance to queue with you physically. Next slide, please. If you find any issues, I think that's the best thing to report. I found one. this week with the Meet Echo. There's a link here in the chair slides. The chair slides are on the data tracker also. Click that issue link and file that issue. That's super helpful. We can improve tools. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's us. When you haven't seen the minutes yet, the minutes takers are where the minutes are. When you go to the agenda, there's a lot of links. Notes are minutes, same synonym. If you are joining via chat, you already know how to do that. And again, if you're in Meet Echo, you already did that. So next slide. We have currently 3 adopted items in the working group items. 2 of them will be the topic of today's session. We assume that even with the open mic and any other business that we might close early, but this assumption has been proven wrong pretty often already. So let's see how that works out. And yeah, then we can go to actually agenda, which is starting with us here, or me in this case, telling you all this. And then we have a presenter on site that I've seen just 10 minutes ago. Brandon, are you in the room? Oh, there you are. You lost your jacket, so I can't really recognize you. Okay, Brandon is now green. And Carsten is in the queue. So this is one example of me just interjecting and allowing Carsten to speak.
Yeah, just one small piece of agenda bashing. I was asking
Carsten,
for...
you're mumbling. Our audio is really bad on our side.
You need to step into the room to hear other people.
You're really faint.
Yeah.
We kind of hear you, but very faintly.
Okay, so I type it.
Oh.
Yeah, he's...
Okay, so yeah, first presenter in the room, Carsten, second presenter remote, and we should have update on the third document remotely as well.
Oh, excellent. Sorry.
I think. Okay.
Brandon, as Carsten recovers from his audio, I think he wants, Carsten's comment, again, I can see this now, is an agenda bashing. He wants to go down to 30 minutes.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Carsten. Yeah, absolutely. You can have more time. We have time this time.
Brandon, the floor is yours.
All right. Next slide, please.
It's you.
There we go. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about the motivation. I'm just going to, this draft has been in IoT Ops for a little while now. And so I thought maybe it would be a good idea to go back through the motivation for the draft and what's in it and where we stand today. So for the motivation, suppose for a moment that you are building an IoT device and you want to conform to some kind of security requirements standard or a baseline security requirements document, but you, as an implementer, have no idea what libraries you need or what standards would help you. Well, this is sort of the idea of this draft. You know, if you need to figure out what available solutions there are and what libraries, well, we can't really tell you what libraries, but we'll come back to that. It would be really nice to know which standards you could use to solve the problems that you have that are presented by a security requirements document. So let's see if we can do that. Next slide, please. So suppose you're following ANISA's baseline security requirements for IoT in the context of critical information infrastructures. Well, how would you implement one of the requirements? Let's take an example. Sign code cryptographically. There's a bunch more there. We'll ignore it. Well, you might want to have some idea of a way that you can do this without just going off and doing your own thing. Signing your code cryptographically is notoriously prone to error. So we probably want some kind of guidance on how to do it right. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we're going to provide a little bit of guidance for the implementer, and we'll say that you can do it using the SOUP manifest. Yes, I am plugging my own draft. I'm going to take that prerogative. Here what you have is some suggestions on a couple of the different IETF standards that address some of the requirements in that particular ANISA security requirement. So you can use suit to deploy your secure updates and have secure invocation on those updates. And if you're protecting your system with TEEP or with a TEE, then you probably want a way to provision trusted applications into that TEE, and TEEP is a good protocol for handling that. Next slide, please. So currently, we're covering 3 separate security requirements documents. First, we've got ANISA's baseline security recommendations for IoT. Next, we've got ETSI's cybersecurity for consumer Internet of Things baseline requirements. And finally, NIST's IoT device cybersecurity capability core baseline. We haven't had any additional baseline documents requested in the working group. And so somewhat selfishly, I'm going to say it's done. Next slide, please. So what we do in the draft is we map each of these requirements to standards that address them. It doesn't provide a mapping to libraries. And the hope is that once you know which RFCs cover the standard that you care about, you should be able to find a library which implements that RFC. One of the things we don't do is reference procedural standards. So what I mean by a procedural standard in this case is some kind of relevant ISO standard, for example, that tells you how you should go about handling your keys or something like that. We don't have that because, well, the procedural standards are sort of outside the scope of typical IETF operating procedures. And you know, all unused network and logical interfaces shall be disabled. We don't have that either, because again, that's not usually the kind of requirement that we address with RFCs. Next slide, please. So the status of the draft currently is that we haven't done anything since IETF 119. It would be good to have some reviewers, and indeed, as I'm saying that, I can tell you that a little over a day ago, there was a review that came in. Mm-hmm. So now I need to address those review comments. But other than that, we could use a few additional reviews. There is a little bit of discussion that's probably necessary around the classification of requirements, because in this draft, it says procedural and architectural in places, and sort of says that it's not going to address those because those aren't standards that are, or those aren't requirements that are easy to address in a normal IETF way. However, it does this almost universally without justification and explaining why these are not considered either document or protocol requirements, things that we could do easily in the IETF. It just says that we aren't going to do them. So it may need a little bit more justification around these requirements. And that's the end of my slides. So are there any questions?
Yeah, we recognize AJ, come on.
Cool, I recognize me too. Brendan, I guess you saw the review. I don't know if you need more help than that. I'm willing to do more than just write like the emails. Just let me know. I can find you. I've been trying to email you for a while.
Would you like to be an author?
I hinted in my email, if you want more help than me just writing like the emails, like that kind of level of help, I'm willing. I could not find the source material for the draft, or I would have been a little more helpful. Right at the most, other than the most irritating time possible to give a lengthy review back. I've been trying to not do this, so I apologize.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy to send you the source material. I think I should probably link it into the next version of the draft because I don't think it currently has a pointer back to the relevant Git repo.
Okay, that's good. I'll park this for now because I'm probably it's not relevant to this draft. I don't really know where the IoT Ops repos plural reside, but I can ask that later. Since this is like a work group, Jeff, but I can help. Anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
question I'm trying to ask is whether we are ready for working group last call, or do you think after this round we might be?
I think maybe we should address AJ's reviews
Yeah,
first,
yeah.
unless you want to consider them
Well-
comments in the context of a working group last call.
Okay. Yeah, how about we'll try to, well, by we, I mean you, but will help. Do a draft revision, and then we can see how much has changed, whether
Yeah, can do.
just kind of get a quantitative measurement of, how stable it is, I suppose.
Well, we'll have to see how it goes after
yeah.
I go through AJ's review.
Okay, fine. And then after that, we'll decide whether it's.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
sounds good.
So this is adding to this. So this is 4 months period we have until the 21 in Dublin. So I say there's a kind of a summer pause. So August is a good time to think about this, and then AJ's comments, and then I think after August we can do the working group last call decision, and I think we'll go from there.
All right, sounds good.
Which, according to agenda, gives it a control.
Yeah.
Carsten is next, but Carsten, please stay patient for your slides to come up in a few seconds.
Yeah, let me just first say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can
Does
hear
this
you.
work?
Yeah, would you like to drive your own slides, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, just pass the control.
Okay. Some meet echo personnel might come. So no, sorry, Encore personnel might come in here to fix the speakers. So if you crank your volume up on your mic, that probably does not hurt on our side, but it might hurt other remote participants. So
You're less faint than before, so I
Yeah.
think we're probably okay. So just go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to talk about RFC 7228 bis, which had a pretty rough time in the last few months because somehow it was stuck in Elwig and couldn't be rescued from there, and data tracker got confused. But that is all behind us, so we can now start working on this. So this is essentially just a new version of RFC 7228, which came out in May 2014, so it's 10 years old by now. It's one of the more well-cited drafts in the IoT space. It has 42 references from RFCs. And why is that so? Well, the problem is that terminology for constrained node networks and low power lossy networks and so on is not very, or has not been very well defined. And this document does that. But yeah, at this state of 10 years ago. So the question is, has the world moved since 10 years ago? And I think we can resoundingly say yes. And also, there is a lot of terminology missing that we probably should be including. And for instance, one aspect is power constraintness. We made some pretty late additions to 7228. We probably should look at how well these classes have served us here. What is about the classes for power and energy? So there is some looking needed at the existing terms, but there also probably needs to be new terminology. MTU constraintness is one area where we have much more variability. We now have millibit networks that have a sustained throughput in the millibit per second range, which we call LPWAN here in the IETF. We have asymmetry, we have other forms of mobility, so that's probably a useful thing to talk about. And there also has been a much wider spread in platforms that we are using. We are seeing a lot of IoT on general purpose platforms, which we would be calling J-class in the next version of the document. But we also have microcontroller class platforms that occasionally are more powerful than the ones we had before. So in 10 years, you would think that Moore's law should have elevated us by at least the factor 32 or something. That, of course, hasn't happened, among others, because Moore's law doesn't work anymore, but also because in this space, Moore's law just usually goes into power savings and cost savings and so on. There are a few other things. We now have much more elaborate crypto capabilities. We have protection capabilities. We have memory protection units, memory management units. We have devices that can sustain a distinction between the kernel and the user mode. We have devices with secure elements, with trust zone, other tamper-proof technologies. So it's probably a good idea to see whether terminology for that could be useful. So let's just look at these most well-known classes that 728 provides. So we have been talking about class 0, class 1, and class 2. At the time, these were typical sizes for IoT devices, and well, class 0 is not powerful enough to be a citizen of the internet, but class 1 and class 2 actually are, with some help. And the amount of help, of course, goes down as you go up the class structure. And we have seen something like a class 3 emerge. We should check whether those numbers are still right. And a luxury microcontroller class, which we call class 4 here. Probably doesn't make sense to be more specific here. And on the general purpose side, we have those cheap open WRT routers, the $5 ones that have a certain limit, in particular on their data size, but also on their flash size. And then we have things like Raspberry Pi, a smartphone, a laptop, or a server, and it probably makes sense to just include them in the terminology so we can talk more about things where we essentially say processing capabilities are pretty much abundant. Brendan.
Just as an FYI, this is a rapidly changing landscape.
Yes.
I would point out that the RP2040, which costs 75 cents, lands at 256K of RAM and typically around 4 to 8 megabytes of flash. So it doesn't even fit in the class 4 device, and it's one of the cheapest microcontrollers you can buy.
Right. Now,
and it's dual core.
IoT has a lot of systems on a chip, which maybe don't have all that wonderful stuff in them. So maybe some of those classes are still useful. We could find out they aren't. I'm totally open to such a result. But 10 years ago, we were surprised how useful they were. And I think we should have a look. And certainly help from providers of technology in this space, including ARM, would be really useful. So this is what I just wanted to bring up because I have some more detailed slides for this, but we probably don't have to go through this. So this is the most well-known class, but maybe terminology, but it's maybe not the one where we need to focus on. We should just work on this while we are working on the other items. So one question with the M group classes, of course, is execute in place architectures, which dominated 10 years ago, are not necessarily what you find these days. So the terminology probably has to adapt to that. Flash sizes are really large, as Brendan just said. So that's the M group, and in the J group, well, yeah, these numbers, of course, change over time, and maybe it's better to paint a track here than to give specific numbers, but it's still most smartphones are less powerful than laptops, and most laptops are less powerful than servers, so it probably still makes sense to distinguish these classes. As I said, this is just one set of terminology. And the idea about this class terminology is that it should be descriptive of actual products, and it should be useful. Yeah, Brendan, the word luxury is not something that would stay in the document. Where we have interesting boundaries, it should be used to also delimit those classes. The point here is to support speech. So we want to be able to use these classes to actually help in our discussions about functionality we want to put into protocols and what kind of support it actually needs from the hardware. So this is really the point. There's no point in putting terminology here that we won't use. Okay, so let me just give a couple of examples for terminology that we could use. Firmware software upgradability comes in different classes, and here is a proposed set of classes that's probably not fine enough, but I think it's really important to be able to talk about systems that need to be discarded because you cannot upgrade them. You upgrade by discarding and buying a new one. There are various impacts that firmware upgrades might have, like rebooting. There may be devices that actually can do a completely hitless reboot, so nobody notices that the thing just installed new software. So that's the spectrum that we might want to open. Another example is what is the isolation functionality we have. I already mentioned memory protection units, MMUs, virtualization style isolation. Why did that happen? And some secure enclave isolation. So again, we can talk about that, but I think it's really important to have terms that distinguish these different kinds of systems. And finally, yeah, this is of course not yet ready, but there probably should be something about secret shielding and the ability to take part in protocols that require secrets. Brendan.
On the previous slide, you're missing trusted execution environments.
Yes.
Which are different from secure enclaves, to be clear.
Yeah, so they are between 7 and 8.
Yeah, that's right.
So just thank I injected myself in the queue with no head on and too lazy to move to the mic. I put into chat a 2-year-old diagram concocted by the Confidential Computing Consortium that's kind of about isolation and confidentiality, same, and there's a bundling boundaries there. I'm not saying that's super helpful, and I'm also aware that's being reworked right now by the governance team of the CCC, but it might be yet another reference for isolation and confidentiality classes here.
Very good, thank you. So this is exactly the kind of review feedback that
live in action.
That's probably not the right link.
It is not?
No. Okay, so let's try to get these things defined in such a way that we can say that this is for doing this particular kind of protocol, this is for doing another kind of protocol. And finally, I would like to mention timing. If you have devices that have power events, like they switch off and turn on later on, how much of a concept of time is retained over these power events. And clearly we have very, very different devices in this range. And if you want to do time-based work, it's probably useful to distinguish these systems. Okay, so I just listed a few things to jog your mind a little bit and send in those ideas and areas where we need improvement. What I would like to do in the next half year or so is initiate focused discussions on the list. So we might have something like a topic of the week. So next week we could talk about the isolation capabilities, and then about time handling and whatever. Then when we are through the most important subjects, we could solicit some reviews. Of course, reviews are always welcome, but they might be even more useful if they describe the state of if they discuss the state of the document after we have done this upgrade. And then maybe update once more and go to a working group last call. So I would expect that we have a working group last call ready document by the end of the year or the start of the next year. That would be my plan. And that's all I have.
Any questions on the proposed new class? Oh, I see AJ in the queue. AJ, you go first.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to switch devices. I hope the noise in the audio is not terrible. The plan seems good. I actually had no idea that you were doing this. This is interesting to me. I work with people who have former experience in working in fabrication labs or fabrication plants and do hardware work at the design and early implementation stage. Have any of people with that subject matter expertise reviewed this? And are they also a target audience of describing systems as they're designed and implemented, not on the tail end when they've already been integrated and completely built?
So the first question was, has anybody reviewed this? And yes, for 7.2.28, there was a lot of feedback from chip makers as well. And we have to reproduce this for this phase.
Okay, that's very cool. I might send it to some colleagues of mine who work in the hardware security projects inside of NIST, who have some of that experience. It would be interesting to see how this could be used large scale. Maybe I can be more involved. I had no idea that I mean, even though it's a BIS document, maybe I'll follow up on the list.
Yeah, there is a certain danger that we get too detailed here. We have to keep this document useful so people can just look up things and use these terms. But getting the real subject matter experts like Random about isolation systems say something about this is exactly what we need now.
My one last parting question. I'm sorry to lengthen, which would be a very short meeting. How do you? I mean, usually there's a certain cycle to and timeline to managing documents as they become RFCs and then updating them. Obviously, it seems like you said you want something very adaptive. How would you make it more adaptive and flexible for industry use, given like the review and publication cycle?
You were breaking up a little bit, but I think you were asking about the timeline for further developing this. I think it would be good to have a.
Now, if you want to get adaptive, I'm sorry. I'm going to. You can answer. I apologize.
So it would be good to have a new RFC that is kind of in this decade, not in the previous decade. And we might want to set up something to update it more often. Maybe we don't have to wait 10 years for the next time. And there were things like people retiring and parent leave and other things getting in the way. That's why this took so long. But I don't think we want to overdo this. So I think that such a document is useful, as can be seen from the number of references. But we also shouldn't try to make the definitive work about the state of the universe here, but just make sure that we have useful terminology we can use.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think I'm done.
Any other questions on the categorizations? Otherwise, we, Carsten, I think a summary of new categories that would be like, on the list for IoT ops would be nice. So that we can float that email better to solicit at least expert review or maybe other entities interested in this categorization scheme.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I assume you're Carsten. Yeah, you're happy to post the questions you want to do, or do you want chairs to drive this? Or I mean, we can take it offline, but
Yeah, I think the authors can drive this
perfect. Thank you.
once this parental leave is over.
There.
John, would you like to drive the slides yourself, or?
It's only this. It's two slides, so we can go to the next. Then we don't need to change anymore.
And John, as feedback from the room, your audio is excellent. It's actually maybe a little bit too loud.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can speak. So these are the changes between 04 and 06. 04 was, or 03, 04 was quite big updates addressing all the comments in the early IOTD review by Russ Housley. Then 05 and 06 was just editorial changes, very small. Then we had a working group last call on 06, and unless I missed some reviews, there's been reviews by Marco and Thomas. Both say that this is in a good condition. Thomas says it looks good, and Marco says it's largely readly. And Thomas has some nits, and Marco has done a very thorough review, but I think everything is quite minor, mostly editorial. Maybe everything is like editorial rephrasing things. So next steps for author side is to update this document based on the comments. I wrote here to update some references, but these references are actually already updated. I missed that. Might be some other. The only thing new I'm aware of that could warrant reference is this new super jumbo record limit draft that changes the TLS record header so it's not compatible with 1.2 anymore. And then you also get some, you can at least get some less overhead if you want. I think there will be a working group adoption call quite soon for this, but the aspect of also lowering overhead has not really been discussed in TLS. The suggested thing at this point would only be to add a reference and say, hey, this exists, just that we have done with a lot of other drafts. When discussed before, it was suggested better to reference things, even drafts that we know will go nowhere. And that's basically it. At IETF 109, it was suggested that the draft should wait published at the same time as CTLS, which is the main main normative reference we are waiting for. Yeah.
Okay, so the plan is you're going to revise and possibly add this extra considerations for the TLS extension, and then we'll just put document on hold until CTLS is done, right? Or we decide that we want to do something else.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
That's good.
Sorry, this is Henk. Is there something speaking against doing a working group scout even without CTLS in its current form? Would it be a problem? Do you really need that to be an auth for a working group call?
No.
Oh, got it. Sorry. Yeah, I retract my question.
Yeah, I don't have anything more. Doesn't seem to be any questions from the public.
Any comments? All right, from the room. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we are, as expected, early in time. If anyone likes to bring up any other business here in the room right now, there is the chance. And I see at least Michael rushing.
Hi, Michael Richardson. So I'm Hank. I was reading our charter this morning or yesterday, and I thought it was an interesting piece of fiction. Anyway, but I mean, I continue to be a little bit frustrated because I think that we could have done, I had wanted to do more actual protocol stuff in this working group. And onboarding was one of those things. But one of the things that I think is in the middle of our list of things, of our life cycle, is configuration backup and restore. It's something that you can actually, you could load with Suit can load configurations. But the question of how do I, go and collect all the configuration of all the devices on the network in a device agnostic kind of way, such that when I replace and or upgrade them and or wipe their disks to remove CrowdStrike, that I can then restore the configuration that was there before. So it's something that I think is really interesting and useful. I think we get into, I'm not proposing we jump into something to doing this, because I actually think we need participation of people implementing. But of course, we always get into chicken and egg situations. I'll implement it when it's an RFC and, blah, 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 back and forth. So I don't know what to suggest, but I want to suggest that we think about what to suggest, and that I think it's an important step. And I know that there's bits and pieces of it missing from quite a number of other IoT verticals, and that the IETF is often in a place of XKC 927. And we do well. We do well doing that. Let's say it that way. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, but Warren, before I delve into that, it's your turn.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to agree with some of what Michael said. The charter was fairly difficult to get actually pushed through the process, but I think the working group has now been around for a while, so it might be reasonable if we want to be like, look, everything's been fine, there hasn't been any drama, nothing's exploded. We might be able to look at sometime expanding the charter to allow for, doing more work and less just talking about being able to do work.
Yeah, and this is Hank as a chair. Coincidentally, you did not raise your hand, by the way. scold. I think so. And so this is not the first time this came up, this meeting. And yeah, I think this will be taken under serious consideration. Also, to Michael's comment on restore and management of updates, I'm taking on Brandon's hat right now and saying the suit manifest deliberately was not designed as a protocol. Yes. So quoting him correctly, he is suggesting here in the room. And so some protocols requirements around that for the management of replay and restructuring and such would be interesting. And now Josh is in the crew, and then Brandon.
So this is a different topic.
That's fine.
My name is Josh Cohen. So I'm one of the original authors of Web Proxy Auto Discovery for web proxy servers. And one of the things we're doing now is taking a look at that, since that was defined in 1997. And what was a short-term solution became a long-term solution. With, that was back before DHCP was widely deployed. So you just get a sense of the choices we had. And so one of the things I wanted to do is get a sense from different areas than just sort of the web, what happens in the HTTP WG and whatnot. And from an IoT standpoint, like I've done some work with like Arduinos and ESP32s, but I was curious, like if people have a sense of when and if proxy servers are used in those devices and how they're either discovered or provisioned, and what any potential requirements are going forward. So if anyone has any thoughts on it.
Sorry.
Just move up to the mic if you're replying.
This is Brendan. From my point of view, proxies have largely been displaced by CDNs. Well, I mean, what does a proxy even mean in the context of HTTPS? Anyway, to Hank's earlier question on suit distribution, it's kind of a challenging situation because, yes, we absolutely avoided building a protocol. And we explicitly tried to build a document format that was transportable over most of the available protocols that we had. Notwithstanding that, there is some back and forth now that we have suit report going through in the suit process. And that means that we could conceivably start looking at a protocol that lives on top of suit or around it. So, we have this, you receive a document and then you process it, and that means that you get some more documents and some payloads, and then in the process of doing that, you generate a report which you send back. So we have all of these pieces, but we haven't described them working together yet. And so I suspect there's some scope for doing that. Now, whether that's a suit working group action or an IoT Ops one, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much appetite there is to take on new work in suit. So I think there's definitely discussion to be had around that.
Michael Richardson in the mic, in reverse order to respond. I have been a fan of suit taking on creating an IETF standard status tracker with suit report collection and blah, blah, blah. And I keep waiting for suit to get far enough so I can propose a rechartering to do that. So that's what I think we should do. But having said that, the thing I said earlier about a standard way to backup configurations and restore them is effectively almost exactly the same piece of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. In a document which is still stuck in the ISG, I removed paragraphs where I referred to the fact that if there was a IETF standard status tracker, it would improve privacy. And then I had a back and forth with Roman about what exactly does that mean. And I said, well, it doesn't exist yet. That's the problem. So I'm saying it would be better. Privacy would be better when you download firmware if you could download it locally, right? And anyway, I wound up deleting it was immaterial to the document. So I deleted the paragraph. It was easier than trying to explain. But Yeah, no, I'm very enthusiastic about, we need to have one of those, that we were wrong. It was correct to not start with one of those because we want to socialize it to all the other people that already have their own. But ultimately, we can't have, just like we can't have an app per appliance, we also can't have a thing that figures out whether we're compliant to the latest software per appliance, right? That has to be, that information has to be collectible in central. To the question of, do IoT devices currently use web proxy discovery, right? Or proxies in general? The answer is, to the dismay of many, many, many people, no. They just don't know how to go through a proxy. They can't be configured to find a proxy. They don't do DHCP to find a proxy. They don't do discovery to find the proxy. They do NAT44 and nothing else works. Okay. The proxy would just be an obstacle. That it would just be a piece that no one would know was broken, and therefore someone would have to turn it off and debug it. And I'm not saying I wouldn't like to have them, but I'm saying today's consumer IoT devices or industrial ones do not in general have that setting.
A clarification. So there may be proxies in the network that they can't traverse, and because they don't have a setting or support for it. Right. Not that they don't exist in the network. They're currently an obstacle.
If there are proxies in the network, they are ignorant of them. They expect to reach the internet via default route and NAT44. Okay. They don't expect to reach a 1010 blah, blah, blah proxy that's on the local LAN they'll do HTTP2 that will get them out. And I know I can tell you there are several Canadian government agencies that's how their network still works, same as 1994 when they started, but IoT devices would not work on their network. Right.
So, well, so if there's a volunteer here who I could make contact with to have a further discussion on how that would work, because if we're going to do a new draft of the proxy discovery, it'd be good to have a solution that works for IoT.
So I'm good. This is Henk at the mic. I moved to the mic. Okay, you can continue this on the mic as soon as I'm done. I'm going on a limb here and say, yeah, well, proxies have been kind of, so it's the disconnection between the, I want to say HTTP connection, for example, you kind of disconnect that. But we have things in the IoT called OSCORE, where you have object security end-to-end and arbitrary disconnected transport beneath it, just due to that reason. Is that a proxy system? It is not, exactly. But does it kind of achieve the same thing if you do it right? So I don't know. So OSCORE solves a problem of disconnecting transports already. And this is, again, like 30 years later, so approximately. So I'm not entirely sure what problem you would solve today that is not solved with the evolution over the past 20 years.
Okay, so yeah, I guess what I'm having trouble getting clarity on is, I thought, what's your name that you spoke before? Michael, yeah. So currently there are situations where IoT device cannot get to the internet because there's an obstacle. Was that correct?
Oh, wow.
No. So, okay.
What I'm trying to say, Josh, is there are networks where they work and they can get to the internet, and there are networks where they don't work and they're simply returned to Home Depot. Okay, so if you had a network that required that you had a proxy to reach anything, the device would simply not work. It would be returned to the vendor, and no one would ever know anything else, because who knows how that network is broken, because it's not stock NAT44. That's what it's tested against, consumer devices. In industrial settings, they often are air-gapped, but there's no proxy that would get them to the network either. They would have to have everything locally, right? There might be gateways that can go get firmware and offer it locally, but that's a, you know, that's a vertical of that industry of what they're doing, right? So the gas industry is different than the food preparation industry. They have totally different IoT verticals. That's all a disaster, of course. But the point is that neither of them are deploying proxies either. Okay, they just are deploying air gaps. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that if you have a new revised proxy discovery mechanism, I don't think it'll be very interesting to any of those vendors. Okay, I don't think you'll get any traction to it. If they were going to implement something, they would have implemented the DHCP thing, right? And that was it. And maybe some of them do, and they don't even know it, but because they bought a stack, right? But I'm trying to say is that I don't think that proxies in the sense of HTTP proxies or even SOCKS proxies, it's just not out there. It's just beyond most manufacturers, you know, ability to understand. Okay. So if you're looking for our support to help, you know, what would be good in a revised protocol, I just think you're going to get an empty answer. We don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is Hank adding maybe my last. Oh, Carsten is in there. I will not talk about Carsten. He's in the queue.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, when we talk about proxies, we think about HTTP proxies, but another interesting kind of proxy is an MQTT broker. And maybe one of the reasons many people like MQTT is that they can work around properties of their IP forwarding experience that they don't like. So they can essentially work around obstacles that other people have put in the way by strategically putting MQTT brokers somewhere. And that's maybe useful to study when we think about gaps in the way we are able to configure and set up and use proxies.
So as a comment to the proxy, I want to say use case, that's the exact thing. If there's a problem statement that we can digest, we could go from there. So if you would be able to formalize a problem statement for today's requirement on the existence or somehow the proxy usage that is not somehow solved by OSCORE or by the I want to say man-in-the-middle broker system that is sometimes used in PubSub, then we could go from there. So if there's real-world interest in that, we are always open to have some work on that. But we need a problem statement that illustrates it to find the right people to work on it. And with that, is there any other business for someone who wants to go to the mic? And I can go once, I can go twice, and then I can all set you free on this Thursday almost evening. Thank you for attending. What did I say?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for taking notes.
Yes.
See you next time.
Yes.
Yes, as far as the what is the problem that IoT type devices are experiencing?
Yeah, exactly. So there's this complexity, but because the validity is because they can't do something without